I never moved away from Sheffield after I left university. I met my wife here, and we've just stayed. I was born and grew up in rural Herefordshire for my sins, and I didn't want to live in the countryside. And my wife Jill's a New Zealander, which is about as far away as you can get from here without actually leaving the planet. And I don't think either of us really wanted to go back to our roots, and it just seemed a nice place to settle. I don't know whether it's still true or not, but when I was a student here, it was said that Sheffield University had the highest proportion of its graduates remaining in the area. When I was a student, there was the original Students' Union red brick building and a link building to the extension over on the side to the west, which that's all there was to it, and it's completely changed. It's been opened out. It's been vastly expanded in size. Of course, the Octagon Centre didn't exist either. The facilities actually on the premises was fairly limited when I was a student. So at the time there were only three of us: the president, secretary, and treasurer, and we established a welfare officer as a fourth union officer. I mean, of course, now I believe you have 8. But it was a big change, because as secretary I was responsible, apart from all the other things, for dealing with students' welfare issues. My particular memories was appalling things to do with student housing, which of course was not in any way regulated the way it is now. I mean, now we've got the property with us and so on, which regulates all student registered housing with them, make sure that it's fit for purpose and so on. It must make the work of dealing with students' housing problems far, far less of an issue for students' union officers. And to me, that's a really, really big thing. I mean, one of the problems that we had during my year of office was that halfway through, the union treasurer resigned, and it therefore fell on the other two of us, my president at the time, who was Andy Tucker, and myself, to deal with all those issues. When I was a student, there was quite a lot going on with sort of left-wing politics in student unions. The particular ones I remember were the International Socialists and the International Marxists, who, while they were tiny in number, they made an awful lot of noise. When I was Students' Union, became Secretary of the Students' Union, Margaret Thatcher had just become leader of the Tory party, and being very anti-union and very anti left-wing activities, and because the left-wing groups were making so much noise, I felt that it was imperative that we look at a different way of dealing with our funding. And what I tried proposing was that we try to split the union, as it were, into almost two separate entities. One which was a commercial enterprise, which developed a trading income, and one which was providing the core students' union activities, which would be funded from the subvention. And that way we would be able to protect ourselves if an incoming government suddenly decided that that they were going to clamp down. Actually, at the time, we were very well off as a students' union. I remember at one NUS conference, Charles Clarke, who was then president of the NUS and subsequently, of course, became a Labour MP, he was funding hosting a meeting where we were discussing things about union finances, and when I mentioned how much we got as funding, everyone just looked at me, and I said, "What's the problem?" And Charles Clarke said, "I think everybody's very jealous." Of course, I mean, the fact that I was doing a degree in mathematics helped with that, because, of course, computers were very much in their infancy at that time. The idea of the laptop or the PC just didn't exist. And the university just had a vast mainframe at the top of the Hicks building that ran on transistors. The other things that I was involved in as well was the creation of the post of a research officer, which we decided was something that the officers would benefit from, because it meant that we had somebody we could turn to about all sorts of things. But I was also responsible for the appointment to that post of one Paul Blomfield, who of course is now MP for Sheffield Central. I was also actually partly involved in Charles Clarke's campaign to be elected president of the NUS. Whether you think that was a good thing in light of his subsequent political career is another matter. Advice, right, 2 things. One is, remember that the union professionals are there to support you, so listen to them. But you don't have to do what they say. You are here to do what you have put forward in your manifesto and what the electorate wants you to do. The professionals are there to assist in that happening. Now, it may be that there are all sorts of things that you really ought not to be doing, and the professionals will point out to you why, and therefore you perhaps need to think it through. So listen to them, but don't feel that you have to do what they tell you. And secondly, do remember that you have been elected to carry out the wishes of the electorate. You're not there to carry out your own personal political agenda. That's one of the problems with national politics, that they once elected in Westminster, a party in government thinks that they have become the masters. At the last officers' reunion that I attended, I was absolutely shocked to discover that our decade of officers were among the most radical. I always thought that young people were much more likely to be iconoclastic and radical, and yet they seem to have mostly stood for election on the basis that it would be a good career move. Just remember that you're not here just to get something good to put on your CV, though of course I quite accept that it can be nothing but beneficial. Remember that you should be here because you're passionate about doing the job, and not just because you think it's going to look good in the future.